Yo guys, what is going on? So here at you with a top 5 budget decks for the BT12 format. I wanted to try something a little bit different, just in case there are any new players or returning players who are looking forward to playing maybe some of their favorite Digimon from the anime. So there's a lot of really cool decks that won't run you too much money in the BT12 format. Now, what I am going off of is going to be a TCG player as well as Digimon card dev. Might not be the most accurate by the time the set 12 drops. This is recorded a little bit before then. But generally, most of the stuff you need is already pre-existing cards, while just some upgrades, including like for Red Hybrid here, you just need some of the new commons and super rares and stuff like that. But most of these decks are going to run you about $80-ish, definitely underneath that 100 benchmark is what I would like to say. Now, whether that's budget or not definitely depends on who you ask. But I think for competitive or somewhat competitive decks, that's a pretty reasonable thing to assert, especially in a card game where there's tons of decks that are more expensive, but there's also decks that are less expensive. If you want to build something just out of commons and rares, you can definitely do that, take it to locals, and maybe do okay. But if you want to play somewhat competitively, I think this is the video for you. So anyways, guys, with all that stuff out of the way, let's go into my 5 decks for the set 12 format. Not in any particular order, but let's talk about Red Hybrid. So I have my current deck list for all these decks here, so if you want to maybe have a template to build off of, by all means, feel free to copy. But Red Hybrid, really cool deck, really strong into a lot of the meta contenders. Really aggressive deck. Your basic game plan just revolves around spitting out these tamers, and then going into your hybrid Digimon. We got Greymon, of course, Shinegreymon, the new guys that all have really fantastic effects, and as well as your boss monsters, Imperialdramon here. You got the new one as well as the old one with the Blitz. By the way, I do want to mention again, like I said, these prices are somewhat accurate, but they can fluctuate. For example, right now, Imperialdramons are listed as like $10 pre-release prices. Probably won't stay that high, so again, while this is $115 right now, those will probably go down. And then Red Memory Boost is also listed as being $13 because it's going off the alt art, whereas the regular art's like $7. So just keep this price in mind with a grain of salt. But yeah, Red Hybrid is really cool if you're a fan of the Digimon Frontier series. Fairly competitive deck. I'd say one of the best in the set 12 format. Like I said, you're just trying to aggro down your opponent. You've got some board removal as well with cards like Greymon as well as your Imperialdramon that lets you delete a 6k or lower. But if he's got a red tamer underneath, you just delete something basically 11k, but it counts as current attack. So if you can boost him with something like Takuya or any of your inheriteds like Flamemon or Burning Gray, then you can boost him up to like 17,000 DP. Atomic Inferno is definitely the best card in the deck. So this again is just a common from set 4. A lot of these cards are relatively old, and while you can get them in higher rarity, most of these cards are relatively cheap. So that's gonna be Red Hybrid. I just kind of wanted to go through that one relatively quickly. And the next deck is going to be Shinegreymon. Again, not a super competitive deck this time around, but I think a deck that a lot of people are looking forward to, a deck that can really do some damage. Once again, Red Memory Boosts are listed a little bit higher, and then the Shinegreymons are listed at like $10 a piece. So again, that probably won't stick, but you're still looking at about $100 for this deck. So the strategy here is to go ahead and build up your back row with your tamers, playing them out for free with cards like Rise Greymon as well as Rise Greymon X Antibody, and then the new BT12 Rise Greymon here really supports that playstyle by basically getting you a free Marcus in case one of your Marcuses that does get deleted, whether that be by battle or maybe an opponent's card effect like a Blackwood Greymon or something. And then, of course, the new Marcus is the kind of centerpiece for the deck. So I'm playing this card at 4 because you really just want to see it all the time. It's the best card in the deck. Being able to, at the start of your main phase, treat this guy as a Digimon. So you can go ahead and attack with him, and then if he becomes suspended, you can Digivolve one of your Digimon into a yellow card with Greymon for that Digivolution cost. So being able to get free Evos on all of your guys is really good. So the kind of main combo there is to maybe spit him out with maybe a Rise Greymon, X Antibody, a regularized Greymon, or something like that, and then go ahead, swing into security, use his effect, Digivolve into the Shinegreymon here, and then Shinegreymon will give him plus 3,000 and Sec attack plus 1, and then of course all your yellow tamers here. TK is a little bit pricey. I think this card's sitting at about $5 right now for the base rarity, but this is a lot of these cards that are somewhat expensive are going to be like more staple cards, stuff like TK, and then some of the other cards we'll get into later on. You know, maybe if you've been playing this game for a long time, you already have these laying around. If not, it's not too big of a deal to, you know, pick up. But in any case, you can also swap these out. If you're really not a fan of TK, you could maybe play a different memory tamer, maybe play more copies of the BT4 Marcus, maybe up your count on the other yellow tamers. There's definitely room for like budget alternatives. For example, like in Red Hybrid, I don't think there's really is anything aside from maybe just cutting red memory boost altogether, but everything pretty much is, you know, is just what it is. I am not playing the Ancient Greymon package in this deck. If you guys know this card, if you guys know Ancient Greymon's card's been notoriously expensive. It's a secret rare from an old set, so it's sitting in around $16 right now. Usually it was a 4 of in the deck, but I actually think you don't even play it in the current version of Red Hybrid. This isn't even like me cutting it for budget reasons. Like, I actually just don't think you need it in the deck, so that saves you a little bit of money on that. But so that's going to be Shinegreymon. The next deck I want to talk about is going to be Beelzemon. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, dude, like, what are you talking about? Beelzemon is not budget whatsoever. There's so many promos you need, so many older cards like the EX2 Beelzemon, stuff like that, and I would agree with you to some extent, but what I do want to say is that Bandai has made it really easy to get into this deck. If you pick up just 2 copies of the Advanced Starter Deck, which is currently sitting at around $30 on TCG Player, that's $60 right there, but for that value, you have pretty much everything you need. You have all of these rookies, aside from the security Imon, which is a promo out of BT12, but this is a box topper. It won't be super expensive, but you have all of the Imons you need. This one gets reprinted. The Wizardmon promo that's really essential gets reprinted. A lot of the old cards like the Deathslinger gets reprinted. You get the Imako, you get the Rivals Barrage, you get basically everything that I'm like kind of listed in this deck list, except for the BT12 cards, which is going to be Wizardmon X Antibody, Ballmon X Antibody, which are just both commons and rares, and then 2 copies of like your Beelzemon X Antibody, which is just a super rare, so that's not going to run you a ton of money. So I honestly think that Bandai has done a really good job making Beelzemon a somewhat budget deck. Now, obviously, the big elephant in the room is going to be the Beelzemon from EX2. Currently, this is sitting at around $16 a copy, and it's arguably a 4 of. Now, I would say if you don't own this card, it's definitely going to hinder you a little bit if you're not playing this card, but if you want to make it as budget as possible, you can just play 4 copies of the starter deck Beelzemon, and better yet, they also, in the starter deck, give you a few copies of the not the EX2, the BT2 Beelzemon, this guy. I know it's not this art, but it's this card that comes in. I think you get 1 copy per starter deck, so if you do pick up 2 starter decks, you'll just get 2 copies of this Beelzemon, of the Warp Beelzemon. So it's still definitely playable and still definitely pretty strong without the EX2 Beelzemon, but obviously, if you do want to make it as competitive as possible, you can always pick up the starter decks and then upgrade this card later. Like, who knows, this card might get reprinted at some point in the future. Here's hoping. But anyways, guys, I just do want to point out that pretty much everything you do need for this deck is in the starter decks. You get a really, really good baseline to go ahead and upgrade from there. Pretty much everything you need. This deck, I've talked about, I think I made a deck list at this point already, but if not, it'll be up soon. But this deck just does some disgusting things, even if you're playing at like a local level without the improvements, or a regional level or whatever. You're still just trying to fill up your trash. You have tons of cards to do that. You still have your win conditions in the form of Beelzemon X Antibody and Beelzemon Blast Mode, which comes in the starter deck, and a lot of really good option option cards and tamers as well. I think the only other option card that doesn't come in the star deck is going to be Miss Memory Boost, but this is a common from BT8, so it won't be too hard getting your hands on that. But so that's Beelzemon, just a deck I did want to talk about. And then the next deck is going to be Hunters. Yes, I know, yet another Tier 1 deck is relatively budget. Now, at the time of recording this, once again, basically none of these cards are available for purchase yet, but pretty much the entire deck is uncommons and rares. The only real exception being your Imperialdramon Superior Mode, as well as your Quartz mods, both of which are super rare. So neither of these cards are going to cost you an arm and a leg, and you only need 2 copies of Quartzmon. You could argue for 3, but you definitely don't need a playset. But everything else, like I said, is uncommons and rares. This is another example of a really, really strong deck that Bandai has, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, just made really accessible to the general public. Like your eggs are uncommon, all your rookies are uncommons, all your champions are uncommons. You've got a couple rares in the form of Clockmon as well as your tamers, but nothing super crazy here. This deck is still really strong, and in fact, this list I made, again, it might be up on my channel by this time this video's out. If not, it will be soon. But this is kind of, I took inspiration from one of the Nationals list in Japan, just because it was really streamlined, not doing anything super complicated. It was just really good at doing what it does. Your basic goal here is to get into your Imperialdramon as well as your Superior Mode. Pair that with something like old Clockshotman, and you are getting rid of basically 4 security cards right off the bat. So not a super hard deck to play. I think despite it being like multicolored, I think this is a relatively beginner-friendly deck, because basically all you're doing is just rookie rushing your opponent, trying to draw into your Superior Mode, and then just floodgating your opponent with something like Quartzmon. So not a crazy amount of thinking. I think you have to do it at base level. So I would recommend this deck for beginners. In fact, most of these decks, except for probably Beelzemon, I'd say Red Hybrid is pretty beginner friendly, especially if you played the game a decent amount and you know how to like evolve hybrids on top of a tamers. It won't cause too much trouble on that end. So the last deck I do want to talk about is going to be Imperialdramon. This is not the most competitive deck, so similar to Shine, I'd probably put this in like a tier 2 category. Not going to be doing too much, but it's still a really fun deck. If you're a fan of Adventure 02, if you love the Imperialdramon line, well, you've got a ton of new support in this BT12 set. Again, nothing being over a super rare. You just got a couple copies of your Imperialdramon Fighter Mode, and even if you don't want to pick this guy up, you can definitely just play the Imperialdramon Fighter Mode from set 8, because the new Dragon Mode just specifies, like, digivolve it into a Digimon with Imperialdramon in its name, so it can evolve it to either Fighter Mode for basically 0 there. So really cool stuff. A lot of blue staples you might need, so if you've got copies of Ice Wall or Hammer Spark laying around, Blue Memory Boost, etc. This is all stuff from older starter decks, as well as Megadeth, as well as your Imperialdramon line here. Some of these cards, like the Imperialdramon, are going to be from the Imperialdramon starter deck, so if you have those laying around, or even if you don't, they're, I think, still sitting at like $10 a pop from there, so you can pick up some of those. The only real, I think, pricey card here is going to be your copies of Davis. Davis is still such a really good memory tamer, so if you've been playing the game for a little bit, you should have these laying around, but if not, then this is, I think, sitting at right about $8 a piece. Even the Alt Art, the shiny version, is, basically the same price as the regular rare, so you could just pick up the newer version. So that'll run you about like $25. But aside from Davis, like I said, nothing here is going to be super expensive. The deck still is, wanting to go for aggro plays with your, your Imperialdramon swinging multiple times. But a lot of the new stuff is focused on like a board control. The new Imperialdramon here is able to freeze Digimon cards by trashing their materials. The new Imperialdramon Fighter Mode is basically a Nidhogg on crack. Like, he can just bottom deck a bunch of cards, gaining Sec Attack +1, blocker, and whatnot is really, really cool. Being able to also unsuspend that guy with something like a Davis Ken is cool as well. But anyways, guys, that's going to be kind of my picks, my top 5 picks for your budget BT12 decks. Again, I would recommend Imperialdramon, as well as Red Hybrid, Shinegreymon, as well as Beelzemon. Despite the fact that Beelzemon does seem to be relatively expensive, I think you can just pick up a couple of copies of the Advanced Starter deck and still be okay. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.